Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing? Hope everyone's well. Just give me 2 minutes to set up and then we can crack on. So, if anyone's in the chat, can you let me know, please, if the sound and the picture is okay? Can you see the hype chart here? Can you hear me okay? How are we looking? Yep, all good. What's up, Raj? Joag, JJ, Lath. How are we all doing, guys? We all good? Nice to all see you here. A few new viewers, always nice. Hope you guys are well. Okay, so let's kick things off with BTC, right? We've had some very interesting moves of late. So, where to start? We can look at the weekly, work our way down. Why not? Always good to have a understanding of the higher time frame picture as we move forward, even if you're taking triggers and executions on the lower time frames, okay? So you can see that we have this weekly SFP in play here, where we basically swept this local high. Now, a few things to say about this, right? The first is that of late, ETH is leading the charge, right? And although this isn't the best signal possible, the market is being heavily pulled up by Ethereum at the moment. You can see that it also occurred here, okay? So by no means does it mean cycle top is in, right? It's just a note that we've swept local highs on the weekly, and that's pretty much it, okay? We could easily see ETH keep pushing, pull BTC up, and basically just keep marching on, invalidating this, or we could see some sort of correction like so. The nice thing about the weekly picture, which is different to what occurred in here, is you can see that basically what happened here is we had a period of consolidation, right? So ranging action on BTC, and then we had a fast and sharp impulse here on the weekly into another range, right? But what happened as we did so is this was basically 3 straight green candles, right? And there wasn't any liquidity, anything in the way of demand being formed here. So what essentially happened here was that we created a liquidity void, otherwise known as an inefficiency, whereby price isn't taking pauses, right? As it climbs during the ascent, there's no pauses that take place in price. It does so sharp, right? And it doesn't do so particularly efficiently. So as you can see, price then moves back through this inefficient zone here. When I say inefficiency, that's otherwise known as an FVG, fair value gap, whatever you want to call it, right? People that use market profile would look at this in terms of single prints. But essentially all it means is that if price comes back down, it can travel through this zone faster and much more likely than if there was demand to buffer, okay? So that's just looking at historical price action. And then you can see in current price action how that differs to where we are at the moment, okay? Because this move up is much more efficient because we stalled here for a number of weeks, okay? 5 to 7 weeks of stalling in this area, ranging, consolidating, and creating this pocket of intra-demand, right? Intra-demand is when you have an impulse to the upside. Then you have a pause, price creates a cluster, and then we have an impulse away again, okay? So this efficient higher time frame price action essentially means that we have a really nice buffer on price here, okay, where it's much less likely to do something like this and correct because we don't have that inefficiency, we don't have that void to fill, right? the FVG, whatever you want to call it. Instead, we have this nice buffer of demand. If you're unfamiliar with demand, I've got a video on supply and demand, please check that out. But just think about it as support, right? It's something that will hold up price, support price. It's likely to do so anyway, okay? So that's a general holistic overview of the weekly. Let's go down to the 3-day. 3-day, a very, very interesting picture here, okay? So firstly, you'll start to see that we've swept this local low here at the 11920s, 111920, sorry, and as we do so, you can see we have a very, very strong signal in the markets here, which is an exact reset, okay? Anyone that's fond of my content or that's been watching previous live streams will know that I'm always talking about RSI resets, and in particular exact resets. Exact resets are when price on the RSI comes all the way back down to the 50 level, cools off from overextending, and taps the 50 exactly, right? This is no coincidence, guys, okay? We are coming right down to the 50 level here, tapping it exactly on the 3-day, and these signals on the higher time frames in particular are not to be trifled with, right? They are not to be trifled with at all. I've run through this multiple times. You know, months ago I was talking about the exact resets on the weeklies on TRX and XRP, and anyone that's followed those trade playouts know exactly how that's gone. But I cannot tell you guys, in heavily trending markets, i.e. BTC, heavily trending to the upside, keep an eye on the higher time frames and keep an eye on the resets, okay? Because signals like this are often very, very strong signals for trend continuation, okay? If you're looking at on the hourly, 30-minute, 15-minute, okay, slightly less validity, slightly less credence, okay? We can place slightly less weighting to resets, exact resets, etc. They're a bit more likely to be invalidated. But when you're looking at higher time frame stuff, 3-day, weekly, monthly, daily, etc., these are strong signals and yeah, stuff to listen to, basically, okay? Now down to the daily. Again, you can see in a bit more detail how we've taken out that low yesterday. Not much to talk about on the daily side of things, to be completely honest, because all we're doing here is retesting the underside of this 50 level here. But again, we lean into the higher time frames more so, right? So the 3-day trumps the daily, and the 3-day picture is looking prime here for another move up, okay? That being said, it will of course be nice for this reclaim to take place. But you can see that the daily has been quite pivotal here in terms of the interactions with the 50 level. So it would be great to see this for bulls reclaim the 50 and move higher on the daily. All right. Okay, so down to the 4-hour, we can see all of this price action in much more granular detail. The 4-hour has pretty much been the most pivotal time frame of late. Why? Firstly, because that is where this pocket of intra-demand is present, okay? So we had this pocket of intra-demand. Again, what's intra-demand? Impulse to the upside, cluster being formed, impulse away, and essentially you want these to be strong and sharp impulses, and you can see that we have that in great measure here. So very, very strong, clean and well-structured pocket of intra-demand here on BTC 4-hour. We come up, we range, we come back down, we test this for the first time, and basically what's happened is plain liquidity games here, okay? Sweep the highs, take out the stops up here, sweep the lows, take out the stops down here, and again, super sharp impulse away from that here. So the plausible rationale in this area is that we again go attack the upside in some manner or another, and see what happens there. In addition, with this sweep down here, we have a very nice 4-hour divergence, more so really on the awesome oscillator than the RSI, but still very much present on the RSI here. The only thing I would have liked to see is this second leg be slightly more overextended. But again, as I've talked about multiple times when trading and charting up divergences, you want to bend the rules in reference to the context of the trend, right? So what I mean by that is that in strong markets, bend your rules, lower your stringency ever so slightly, i.e. you don't have to see the second leg of the divergence overextended down here at the 30 level is fine. Why? Because we have a very clean, well-structured arc here that hasn't gone too close to the 50 level to reset it. We have confluence across the awesome oscillator. We also have price acting in a great area to do business in, sweeping this isolated low here. There aren't really any other lows that it could draw for here. So sweeping this isolated independent low here into a pocket of intra-demand, very much pro-trend, very much aligning with the higher time frames. And of course, you know, with the context that we have ETH doing what it's doing, all of these things come together to sort of harmonize a strong, sensible trade thesis. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Hourly, not much to see apart from price simply cooling off here. Okay. So basically what we're going to see in this area here is whether we do push up or whether we come back to fill this, okay? So when strong, sharp moves happen like this, it's basically going to go one of two ways, okay? Rage on, rage upwards, or come back to fill in this inefficiency here because this was a very, very sharp move off the lows. So that will be yet to be seen. We can take a look at the deltas as well. Just give me 1 sec to get them up. So the deltas on BTC looking relatively healthy in this area. You can see that the most standout candle here is in this area here. And it's basically this candle here. So as we move down, lots of market selling occurred into limit bids, which is a great sign for a pivot and reversal to the upside. As people that have followed my delta content recently know, I use the concept of local delta quite a lot, okay? So it doesn't have to be absorption here, soak those market sells and move up instantly. Often what we see is more grinding down, more grinding around before that impulse takes place, okay, which is exactly what we've seen here. Notably, some positive delta taking place here, but as this is pro-trend delta, right, this is very much aligning with the higher time frame trend. We want to be focusing on negative delta to catch a move to the upside, align with the trend. I look at these with 2 to 3 times magnification versus counter trend delta, okay? So if you picture this delta here, 2 to 3 times the size of what it actually is, then you'll have a sort of point of reference versus the positive delta much more accurately, okay? So that's pretty much it for BTC. We can now move on to ETH, which has been, of course, the hot topic at the moment. Super interesting price action. So let's pull it across and get stuck in. Just going to cover a couple of questions here. Do you remember me? I sell my house to short Sol at 220 and it helped me bought a mansion. Thank you a lot. I have a feeling you're pulling my leg, but if you're not, then you're very welcome. Pengu pump? Yeah, fair enough. JJ, when would you consider the 4-hour intra to be invalidated? So with demand, it's basically as soon as it gets either cut through, so we'd have to see something like this take place, where it cuts through, or personally, because basically what happens with supply and demand is once it forms, right? So this is fresh, get rid of this as well. This is fresh intra-demand here. right? Once it forms, it is fresh, it has had no taps into it, okay? Then as price starts moving forward, taps into it once. At this point, even just with one tap, it turns into weak SD, okay? Because it has already been tapped into once. And then basically what happens is as it gets tapped into more and more, it becomes weaker and weaker. So at this point, we really wouldn't want to see price revisit that demand zone. It has been known in super strong trends to tap 2-3 times into the demand zone or supply zone in bear markets and hold up. That being said, if we start coming down here, tapping into it again, this is very much weakened at this point. If we start seeing closes into this zone, so 4-hour closes, I'm talking about closes on the time frame of charting, i.e. this is a 4-hour demand zone. You don't want to see a 4-hour close back into this. That's basically at which point I'd start to consider it invalidated. Okay, so of course a strike through means it's invalidated, but also if we start closing into the zone as well, then at that point I'd basically just do this. Okay, get rid of it. Okay, so Ethereum, again, let's look at the weekly, move our way down. Okay, so a incredibly interesting picture on the weekly here for ETH. Okay, so if I'm completely honest, I am not the biggest fan of what's gone on here as an ETH bull, right? That's not to say that we're nuking and going back to a 1k ETH. It's not what I'm saying at all. All I'm saying is in the notion of speed, efficiency, inefficiency, and efficient price action, I would have really liked, I said this last stream, really liked ETH to muck around a bit more in this area. Okay, something like this would have been ideal. It doesn't have to, go this far into November. It could have been something, even just something like this would have been great. Something like so, some sort of higher time frame consolidation, which could still take place. Okay, I'm not writing this off at all. What I wouldn't like to see is price wick up again. Okay, so it's these inefficient, sharp, speedy moves that do make me a little bit anxious. On ETH in general, okay? Reason being is because we really do want price to sort of stall. We don't want to take out all-time highs with such speed on the higher time frames. Weekly, now overextended as well. And I really hope that this is one of those anomalies to the rule where we basically just rage on upwards and just say fuck you to any sort of speed dynamics, efficiency dynamics, and just keep going forward and forward. And take this overextension from the 73s up here like we did to the 84s or whatever it is, would be ideal, because these things can happen for sure, but it would have been healthier to see some sort of consolidation, some sort of bracketing, higher time frame price action here underneath the all-time highs, to give a bit more credence to the argument of something like this taking place. Reset the oscillators, reset momentum, and charge onwards. That being said, it's not what's happened on ETH, so we should hope for some sort of consolidation still before we take out all-time highs properly, start closing above, and that's the hope for bulls anyway. Okay, the good news is that as we start drifting down from the weekly down to the daily, the 4-hour, the hourly, there is progressively good news. But the first thing to note is that this 3-day divergence here, which we were sort of talking about last stream or the stream before, technically invalidated on the RSI and certainly invalidated on the awesome oscillator. Okay, so there is no signal of diverging momentum on the AO, which is really great, because the AO on the higher time frame means a hell of a lot. Okay, it means a hell of a lot in terms of diverging momentum. And anyone that's not familiar with the AO, it's slightly slower than the RSI, but in that sense, it's slightly more reliable. And you can see that play out here. Okay, so clean diverging momentum here. You can see the AO just start to teeter off, round up and round off here as price does this, and basically marked the higher time frame local lows on Ethereum, which led to basically price just completely raging, coming from 1.5 all the way to scratching 5k here on ETH. So again, not something to be trifled with, but the fact that we're not diverging in this area here is great news. Okay, down to the daily. Can't say the same on the AO, but we have the RSI as some sort of solace here. Okay, so price making higher highs, the awesome oscillator making lower highs, but in the mixer we have this clean, near exact RSI reset on the daily here. Okay, so I was in an ETH long, right? I've taken that off the table now. Didn't intend to disclose any positions. I've kind of decided that I'm going to stop disclosing positions on my live streams, simply for the fact that I've taken a few L's of late, and I have a feeling through reviewing my journals that doing the trade reviews with you guys is actually negatively affecting my psychology, even subconsciously. It's something that I wasn't really aware of, but I've started to see my progress and my performance slightly diminish, because I feel like I've been slightly forcing trades just so I have something to speak about when I stream with you guys from an educational standpoint, and it's affecting my patience, my discipline, my stringency. Even if it's affecting it 2 to 3%, my trading comes first, my education to you guys comes second. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. That being said, I'm happy to run through this ETH position because it kind of makes sense to do so whilst talking about it on the higher time frames. It was basically using this daily reset as higher time frame rationale, right? Looking at this and going, okay, the daily's resetting here. That is some serious higher time frame confluence that's going on. You can see what happened as it did so here. Marked the lows, huge upside potential on ETH. And then as we came down to the slightly lower time frames, we took out these stacked lows. Okay, so we're taking out these stacked lows on ETH. You can actually even do this and say that they're triple stack lows. Essentially, when you're looking at SFP trades, sweep trades, sweep and reverse, which is very much one of my main price action concepts to work with in terms of left side confluence on the charts. Stacked lows, stacked highs are much better. So when you're aligning with the trend and you're not just taking out one low, right? So you're aligning with the uptrend, you're not just sweeping the low of one isolated low, you're sweeping multiple stacked lows here. So these are triple stacked lows, aligning with the trend. Really nice confluence. Okay, so we've got daily reset, we've got triple stacked lows that are being wiped out. Let's see what other confluence there was. We had some decent delta here as well. Okay, so although these are red delta bars, which means they're lower volume delta than the orange bars, this is still a significant cluster of delta. It's pretty much the highest on the page as we took out these lows. And you can see the play out here was great. Okay, so we came over yesterday, mucked around above these lows for a little bit, and then just launched up. Okay, as we took out these highs up here, which are, as you know, all-time highs, we diverged on the 15-minute, right? So going down to the slightly lower time frames to see what's going on. Diverged on the 15-minute. The awesome oscillator and the RSI making lower highs as price indeed makes higher highs, taking it out. And although we have two things, price looking fairly healthy here on the lower time frames, and then also another really nice cluster of delta in here. At the time, it seemed the right thing to do to realize profits in this area here. I've also got another couple of long positions I'm running, so still maintain that overall open long side exposure. But this was a really nice trade taken from this area here to this area up here for around 4 to 5 hour, I believe. So again, it's just a note to you guys of how to sort of weave together the higher time frames in with the lower time frames to sort of rationalize a more holistic trade thesis that just makes sense. Okay, you're not just looking at one time frame, you're not just looking at the hourly and going, okay, this is what's happening here. You're looking at multiple time frames, you're using multiple theories. We've got daily resets, we've got delta, we've got stacked lows, we've even moved into a pocket of intra-demand here as well. Some divergences here. If we go down to 30-minute, again, we can see that there was indeed a divergence on the RSI here, although that second leg, again, is a rule breaker because it dips lower than the first and it's not technically a divergence. It's still a sort of diverging structure that we need to take into account, okay? Again, why the game of trading is so nuanced, so difficult, because this on any normal market wouldn't have even played a factor into my trade process. Okay, I would have looked at this and gone, okay, cool. The second leg is, the first leg isn't even overextended. The second leg is lower than the first, so we don't even have a technical divergence going on here. And we don't even have confluence across the awesome oscillator. But the fact that ETH is raging as hard as it is, okay, it's by far the strongest market around. This is pretty much as strong as a trend gets. We then look at sort of breaking our rules, bending our rules, okay, and going, okay, so what's happening here is we are, yes, invalidating this divergence from a technical perspective by dipping this leg, the second leg, lower than the first. But if you look at price is still moving down much more aggressively than this. Okay, so if you're looking at the slant of price versus the slant of the RSI, these are the sort of subtle nuances that I do weave into my thought process and rationale when taking trades that are aligning with such strong trends, essentially, okay? So, a bit of a rant there, and I said to myself I wouldn't speak to you guys about my positions, but that made a lot of sense to do so from an educational standpoint, so I hope you guys garner some value from all of that as well. What's up, Angelo? How you doing? Trans, still thank you, sir. Still appreciate it so much. Are you serious? Do you actually short Sol and buy a mansion off my call? You're trolling, surely. What's up, Jervin? How you doing? Yeah, did I run through that for you, Jervin? Let me know. Okay, so we've covered ETH in a sort of funny backward sense by doing that trade recap. So essentially, look, what we're looking for in ETH is obviously we want that higher time frame consolidations to take place, ideally for this to look a little bit healthier on the higher time frames, but then also on the lower time frames as well. Okay, so ideally the 1 hour does something like this. Okay, we range around in this area, which would then knock into the higher time frames as well. I'm not talking the weekly, but the 12 hour and the daily would look a little bit healthier if we did so. And essentially what we want to do with ETH is, maintain the uptrend, but just have a bit more chill, okay? Either that or rage up, scorch to 10K and say fuck you to all the rules of price action, okay? Because of course we can adhere to sort of different doctrines, thought principles, etc. But there are always the anomalies where price just does something crazy, and we have to take that into account as well as a possibility, as an outcome. For me, I'm keeping my guard up a little bit, right? Trying to maintain my cool, not letting my emotions get in the way of my trade process as much as possible. Hence why I closed off my ETH position here. A very nice 4 or 5 R within a matter of days here. Very, very sharp pump here, taking out all-time high with a lower time frame divergence, leaving this inefficiency in its wake as well. And look, if ETH goes on to rage, then I'll be the first one clapping and cheering it on, because I'm heavily spot allocated. I've also got a couple more open positions on the market from the trading side of things. And it's just about being sensible, not being too emotional about things, and just keeping your rationale about you, responding to what the charts are telling you, and TPing at all-time highs into a lower time frame divergence, hovering above an inefficiency, seems like the most prudent and sensible thing to do, considering my overall exposure to the markets as well. So I hope that sort of helps you rationalize the way that I deal with open risk, the way that I deal with the emotional side of things as well. Because for me, I very much did not want to close this position. Okay, it's one of those things where I had to sort of fight tooth and nail to force myself to do so, because I'm trying to act as sensibly, as rationally as possible. As I said, I've racked up a couple of losses recently. I covered them on the last live stream. And I want to really try and get back to the trading before that, right? So earlier on in the year, really, really great trading, very sensible, non-emotional, systematic, mechanical stuff. And that's the trader that I'm very proud of, that I've got to that point, and I want to sort of maintain that and not drift into more emotional, sort of moon boy status trading, where I'm thinking, you know, I could run this for, you know, fuck a 5R, let's take it to 50R sort of thing. You know, there is a time and place for that, and scratching all-time highs, taking it out with a lower time frame divergence, as I said, looming over a lower time frame inefficiency, doesn't make sense for me to be that person right now. Okay, so we've covered ETH, we've covered BTC. I just want to go through my weekly strength watch list. Now, for those of you that don't know, I have a curated watch list here called Weekly Strength, and you can see it's just a handful of alts here. Every Tuesday with my group, I run through the full list of about 170 tickers, and pick out those that are strongest on the weekly time frame, and then basically compile it into a watch list, weekly strength, and hone in on these to basically go laser vision, do a deep dive on these markets, focus on the strongest markets only. In a bear market, I'll have a weekly weakness watch list and be doing the opposite, right? So I'll be looking at the weakest markets on the weekly. And if you're not doing this, please do it. It's probably been one of the most groundbreaking recent discoveries, semi-recent discoveries of the way that I analyze and scan the markets. It's made me much more relaxed. It's made me much more laser focused. I know exactly what's happening on all of these markets. And of course, naturally, it's just increased my probabilities of winning trades, because I'm not just taking trades on any market willy-nilly just because it's got a good setup. I'm taking trades on the hourly time frame, on the 30-minute time frame, using those lower time frames to align with the higher time frame strength. Okay, align with the strongest markets on the higher time frames, using the thought process that the strongest will continue to be the strongest. Okay, and until we see some sort of parabolic blow off on the higher time frames and some good signs of liquidity rotation, this is basically, this is the watch list to focus on. So feel free to screenshot this, it will save you some time. But I do recommend doing it yourself every week, going through your more extensive watch list on the weeklies, looking at which ones are the strongest, compiling your own list, etc. Okay, so we'll tackle the markets one by one, see if we can hunt for any setups. I'm just going to go from the daily down. Okay, so Aave looking particularly strong, nice push above these highs here. RSI still looking healthy on the daily. Down to the 12-hour, clean reclaim on the 50 here. and you can see that it's pushing nice and strong above these highs. Obviously we don't want to sweep and deviate and lock underneath these, right? So we want this to hold ideally. We don't want price to deviate, sweep and lock back underneath. On the hourly, price looks good. It's cooling off from overextensions, very healthy, very natural. In terms of looking for long setups, the only thing really we have here, I mean, breakout wise, we wouldn't want to take this, because for breakout trades, what we want to see is price to cool off, consolidate, and then punch up. So that's a skip trade from my side in terms of a breakout here. You can see that I've got this MSDZ purple zone here, market structure defense zone, which is basically where price would revisit before coming back up. You can see we just front run that on Aave. If we had moved into this and given us some sort of confluence, lower time frame divergences, etc., then there could have been a trade setup, but nothing really here on Aave. BNB, not much to say. Super strong. Okay, very strong indeed. RSI in good stead here, not overextended on the daily. Going down to the 4 hour, we can see that we broke out of this level here. 1, 2, 3, 4 touch points. Broke up. I would not be surprised in the slightest to see BNB keep raging on from here. Not take out any of these lows, just keep marching onwards. That being said, by my system anyway, there's nothing here in the way of a setup. Okay, like I didn't take the breakout trade because there was no consolidation in this area here. We just sort of punch through it here, sweep the highs here. At this point, I'm not going to take a trade. At this point, I'm not going to take a trade either, because this consolidation was just a bit janky, to say the least, with this sweep up here. And yeah, this wasn't really very well structured. Typically what we want to see is more of like a box, okay, where price just brackets, builds up the steam, moves up, and this was more of a putting in another swing low before a move higher. So all in all, looking very strong, looking very healthy. I do have alerts down here. We get rid of this. We can see that we have some stack lows here. Right, so when I was running through my trade on ETH, I was talking about stack lows. We've got a couple in here, which if price does come down and take these out, would make for a pretty healthy setup. Okay, we'd have to see some nice confluence, but anyway, alert set to the downside. And yeah, until then, there's no FOMO, right? My gut tells me that BNB is going to rage on, but no FOMO. I still need a systematic setup to get in. So if some price does something like this, moves higher, we print a symmetrical triangle, then great, I can get on board, take the break or whatever it is, and then I can take a trigger to the upside. But if I don't get a valid trigger to the upside, then it's simply setting alerts to the downside and hoping that the market lets us in. Deep, let's look at the daily. Okay, so healthy market, bracketing. This is a potential trend line in here. Okay, looking at the bodies really, like so. But I doubt there'll be anything in the way of a setup here. Get rid of this. Down to the hourly. Yeah. So again, the only thing to the upside would be a potential third tap to validate this trend line and come down, consolidate, move up. But we're ways away from that occurring, of course, on the daily time frame. On the lower time frames, nothing really. You can see that I've got my alert set down here at this isolated low, but until then, nothing really in the way of a trade. Filecoin, right, so I've had my alerts down at this low for some time. Slightly annoyed to see the front running take place, but it is what it is. You can see the daily here on the awesome oscillator starting to diverge quite significantly against price, which has been grinding down. So whether we get this final low being taken out or not, yet to be seen. But for me, if it doesn't, it's no trade. I'm not going to start taking anything in this area at any of these other lows, simply because I only like taking sweep or SFP trades at the final independent isolated low. Okay. If there are other lows that price could draw or reach for, then it's just not something I'm going to be taking. Okay. I'd rather wait for the next setup where we do have that isolated low, like looking at deep, right? If you look at this, it is clearly the only low in this area. Okay, it's the only low. If price comes down, we get some nice confluence, some speed, some divergences, or both. Then we know that we're working at the sweep low, right? This is where liquidity will be building up. This is where we should be taking our trade. But with FART, when we have multiple lows in this area, it's like, cool, right? I'll just wait for the next setup, wait for the next trade. Something with isolated independent lows that I can work with. So again, this is what I'm waiting for on Fartcoin. To the upside, nothing really here. Okay, potential breakout level here, but only 2 touch points, so it's not valid at the moment. We have to see another 3rd touch point come up, then some consolidation take place, and then potentially a high time frame breakout. Hype again, front run, similar to Aave, this market structure defense zone down here. This is kind of a cluster of demand, to be honest, because we've got this impulse, cluster, impulse. Would have been a really nice area to get long into, but ETH and BTC had other plans. Their impulses moved everything upwards, so we didn't get our trigger here. In terms of triggers to the upside, we've got 2 touch points on the 4-hour. Okay, so again, we need that 3rd to take place. Something like so. 3rd to take place. And then ideally consolidation afterwards. Okay. Now, if the consolidation is super clean on a market like Hype, on purely the 3rd tap, then I might be willing to take it. But we do really want to see some textbook proper consolidation, a nice box structure. You can really see price sort of hovering, building up steam underneath this breakout level. RSI resets as well. Okay, so if it gets overextended on this first push up here, we want to see the RSI reset momentum here as well. Something like this, maybe. If we push up from here, price pushes up like this, then as the consolidation is taking place, we want to see the RSI come down to the 50 level. Obviously, an exact reset would be ideal. If not, at least between the 45 and 55 level. But again, Hype is a super strong market. It's something that I do really want to get long on. So again, ideally we want 3 taps to validate breakout levels, but it's just this notion of slightly bending our rules based on the trend and context of the market that we're trading. Pendle, very strong of late, very strong market indeed. RSI in good stead. We've come down for not an exact reset, but between the 55 and 45 level, still a reset. We can see we came down to the 52s here. And on the lower time frames, did we take out this low in the end? No, I mean, just with a magnifying glass. Okay, so there would have been no trigger here. One of my rules is that if we have SFPs or sweeps that take place, but you really have to do this to see if it occurred, then it's a skip trade. Okay, so that's just a note to you all. In this case, it did play out fine, but usually what will happen is you get a deeper sweep to get in on, in which case, if you have a tight stop, it's bad news for you. And yeah, if I have to zoom in that much, then I'm not going to be taking that, okay? I would actually set another alert here just in case we come back down, because for me this is more equal lows than it is anything else. More equal lows than an SFP, and triggers to the upside wise, these highs are a little bit too janky to give any validity to this here. That being said, I'm sure price will continue going upwards. It's just that I don't have a systematic, mechanical, and technical trigger to enter. Okay, Sol looking strong, daily RSI, beautiful. Okay, so you can see how it's just holding here, using that mid as support. We came up here, took out this high, challenging again. Okay, so very, very good signs on Solana. Go down to the 4. Okay, so we have a bunch of stack lows now that formed. I count these all as stack lows, so triple stack lows here. Again, I'm not going to set my alert at the first because I want them all to be taken out down to that final low. Will we get this? Almost surely not. But even still, you know, it's a patience game. Don't have anything really in the way of triggers to the upside yet. Okay, so this maybe, right? So looking at these bodies on the 4-hour, maybe here. But what I really want to see here is, again, you know, that third touch point to lock in, come down, consolidate. And if not, I may be taking a trade in this area. But again, same as hype, I want to see some serious textbook consolidation take place. And I'd be less willing to step into this market than I would hype, simply because hype's been a bit stronger. And as a result of that, I'm a bit more willing to bend the rules on hype. Okay, so SUI, we now have double stacked lows here. Again, with the strong impulses, will we see these be tested? I'm not sure. But these are the areas of interest that we want to be stepping into the market on. Okay, I'm just going to run through the rest of the charts on the sort of 4-hour, 1 hour, etc., because I'm slightly pressed for time. TRX, a lovely market. Okay, so just for the sake of doing it, because we've covered the ETH trade, I'm also long TRX. So long in here. The rationale behind this long is very much I put it down in my journal as a rule breaker, right? Because I'll show you why. Within my gatekeeping process, which is basically my pre-trade process, which keeps me out of shit trades, I didn't pass the first few gates. Okay, so the first thing I need to say, which system am I operating? Regular system. Okay, move on to the next gate. Is the trade based off a sweep, SD, or deviation? And it was a no. Okay, so basically that gate kept me out, right? So technically I shouldn't be taking the trade based on my gatekeeping system. That being said, I lent into gut and intuition slightly more so here. And it was basically just a reset play on an incredibly strong market. Okay, you can see the 12-hour here. It's just absolute textbook resets, exact resets, one after the other. We got 1, 2, and then the third took place, and really hovering around the mid here. You can see price stalling here as we came down. And it was just simply a guts and intuition play that said to me, it's time to bend or break your rules. Just hop out of your systematic stance for a second. Look at the context of what's happening in the market here. You know, within my gatekeeping, there would be nothing that really says, okay, you can just take a reset into essentially nothing here. Right, we're not moving into, you know, strong support resistance. We're not moving into valid supply or demand. We're not taking out a low and putting in a strong SFP. It's simply that we've had such textbook interactions with the mid on the 12 that I'm basically betting that the same repeats itself. Okay. So yeah, I said I wasn't going to cover my trades. I'm really going to try and not do that next time, and just stick to clean market reviews. But again, I felt like I could offer some value by running through TRX. Okay, so we can move on to some of the other markets here. Virtual. All right, let's look at virtual. So this for me is, yeah, we need to be taking out these to even think about getting into position. Okay, so we've got double stacked lows here, alert at the final low here, and as simple as that. Okay, I'm not looking to take any trades to the upside because this is actually quite weak on the higher time frames. Okay, and generally speaking, it would have to be a very, very clean setup here. Either some speed, by which we'd have to travel up first to get enough gravity to take it out, or looking for some very clean lower time frame divergences. The stacked lows are nice, they're well placed together, there's good distance between them. But again, it's just looking at the market more holistically and saying, okay, fine, this is just about fine on the weekly in terms of making the list, just based on this initial impulse here. But now we have to see some very, very strong signals, some very, very sort of convincing price action concepts that harmonize in order to step into this market. XMR is the same sort of thing. Okay, it was the glory child back here in May, but this bleed down, very much not what we want to see. The 12 hour has been the most interesting price action, the most interesting time frame of late, with this double divergence that occurred here across both the RSI and the Awesome Oscillator. But yeah, whether we see a push up from this area is yet to be seen. And in terms of trade triggers, I don't anticipate me stepping into the market for a long on XMR anytime soon. Okay, this 12 hour divergence, although fairly strong and well structured, into nothing here. Okay, so we're basically just diverging into a void, and there wasn't anything really very convincing for me to step in, especially considering we sort of lost key levels here. We're grinding down, bleeding down, and looking particularly weak on fairly significant timeframes as well for XMR. Okay, so for me to start stepping into the market on the long side of XMR, I want to see this uptrend be re-established, some good triggers to the upside form, and then at that point I may start looking to step in. But I'm not going to be knife catching even something as clean as a 12-hour divergence. 12 hours is a good time frame to be actioning. It's a good level of credence and validity. But I do want to see some sort of confirmation on Monero first. XRP, again, newly stacked lows. Okay, so double stacked lows here on XRP. This market has a particular tendency to front run lows, as you can see here. But again, there's nothing we can do about that. Okay, I'm not going to start bending my system that much to basically just guessing that a front run will take place. I'm not a guesser, I'm not a gambler, I'm a systematic trader, and bending the rules is one thing, but just straight up throwing them out the window is not something that I'd ever do. Okay, so looking for this final low here to be taken on XRP. I've said for some time, along with HBAR, I believe it was, that very, very, very clean lows to be taken here. Yeah, just a patience game, seeing if any of them get hit, any of our alerts go off. Same deal with syrup. Okay, I'm not going to be stepping into this market. There's no triggers to the upside. We have a clean, independent, isolated low here, but as long as the front running is taking place, I'm happy to simply ride trades like the TRX trade, my spot height position, etc., and wait patiently for these to either the alerts to go off or price to come up, form some new upside trigger plays for us in terms of breakouts, and reevaluate the situation. Again, nothing here, right? We're just diddling around in the middle, so nothing I really want to do here whilst we're in the middle of this range. Again, one clean isolated low here. So just to note, I'm not really going to start doing stuff like this and calling it stack lows. Okay, for me, this distance is a bit too much. You want them to be clean, close, and tightly packed together, like we saw those triple lows on ETH, for instance. So just a note, if you do weave these this concept of stacked lows and highs into your sweep or SFP trading, which I very much recommend you do, because it's super clean and gives you a nice level of extra confluence. Just be careful not to sort of stretch it out too far. Now you can see down here, this is nice, okay, because they're close together, right? So this would be double stack lows here. This, for me, a bit too far away. We are approaching the half past mark, so unfortunately I have to shoot off, guys. But if you wish to screenshot this, keep an eye on these markets. These are the markets that I'm looking to align with as much as possible. If not, then please go through and make your own weekly strength watch list. I guarantee you it will keep you out of a ton of shit positions. The positions that you do take will be aligned with the trend much more, and it's a great way for trend alignment and just simply increasing performance and profitability of the markets. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will be doing another live stream next week, same time slot, 10:30 a.m. UK. Until then, take care, stay stringent, stay disciplined, and happy trading.